love somebody when you don't know them? Do you know me? Is the question. And so I'm humbled by the engagement of the youth on this platform and their willingness to listen. And so it's incumbent upon we, the older people, how do we pass on the torch to the next generation? And that is the core issue we have to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you to Anthony and to Cassidy for your responses, and to Matriarch Na and to Dr. Mjiba for your responses. We have about 4 more questions, so I'm going to go forward to the third, which is, how can the African education system and institutions facilitate a smooth transition for diaspora youth returning to study or work in Africa, and perhaps make Africa their home? For the most part, based on the cultural and social experience and hospitality of the African people. So again, how can the African education system and institutions facilitate a smooth transition for the diaspora youth?
So I guess I can take this, and I want to kind of marry the last question and this question. And I guess I'm a little bit struggling with this notion of Africa having the responsibility to create a smooth transition for the diaspora, right? And the reason why I'm struggling with that a bit is because we have a situation where the majority of Ghanaians make less than $2 a day, right? Only 30% of working adults in Ghana are employed in the formal sector. I happen to be one of those. The other 70% are in the what we call informal sector, i.e., they're they are in the substance economy, right? Many people, of a certain age in Ghana, for example, not all, but some have, perhaps don't have access to university education. And so for me, the question about making a smooth transition, I think, may be something that we could think about in the future from these educational institutions. But I think there needs to be a relationship between diasporan organizations like this organization and organizations on the continent to help bridge the gap. And I think we also need to think about a two-way conversation, right? Because oftentimes you have diasporans that come, they do study abroad, they come for a couple of weeks, they love Ghana, they eat some kinke, somebody takes them to do some eat some wache at Atomic, somebody takes them over to the, slave dungeons in Cape Coast, Elmina, people drop everything they're doing for, days on end to tout, diasporans around, and they leave, and then the people that they left find themselves where they were, and their lives have been transformed, and this is the best thing that has happened to them, and it totally changes the way that they view themselves, and I'm speaking from experience. This is exactly what happened to me, right? But then what are we leaving in Ghana, right? Is the question. And so I think to turn this question on its head, to ask, how do institutions like this amazing institution which we're discussing, and institutions across the continent collaborate to create safe spaces in order for African people globally to interact, right? Whether it's geographically, whether it's ideologically, whether it's spiritually or culturally. And I want to just say this to any youth or any diasporan person who's thinking about moving to Africa and they have never been. Please do not do that. Please do not do that. Please do not sell all your stuff. Please do not give away your car. Please do not get your $5,000 and move to Ghana and think that your life is going to be amazing. because you will come to Ghana and you will have to pay for a year of rent up front, and people are charging exorbitant rent rates, and you'll be broke before you can turn around and say jack. Please don't do that. What you do is you build networks wherever you want to move. One, come and see Ghana. Make some friends. Build, join associations. If you're a student, come get I'm not trying to do, straight up publicity, but I'll do it. Come get a bachelor's degree at Legom, study abroad, get a master's in African studies, right? And build networks so that when you if and when you decide to transition, you have friends, you have extended family, you know what the system is, you know the difference between taking Uber, taxi, and Trotro, right? And this is the last thing I'm going to say, and I think this is really important. And I think Cassidy mentioned this, and I think it's important for us to know that as African people, we cannot think that running from the diaspora to the continent, our problems will disappear. If we have mental health issues, they will follow you. If we have internal struggles, they will follow you. If you have issues with your skin complexion, it will follow you. If you have financial challenges, it will follow you. If you start and stop jobs and you're not able to complete, it will follow you. If you have relationship issues, you have issues with your mama, issues with your whoever, they will all follow you, right? Because as African people, we don't just need a identity, revolution. We need a social revolution. We need an economic revolution. We need a political revolution. And we need what Kwame Nkrumah says, to develop a new pan-African personality. And that begins by looking and doing some internal struggles before we run somewhere else, because our struggles will come with us. Thank you.
I love everything that you said, and I really appreciate how powerful you were able to evoke your thoughts and considerations of what it would take, and recognizing of what it is to physically be in Ghana, and acting as kind of like a mirror for that. So thank you for that, Dr. Mjiba. Unless anyone else would like to also respond to this question, we can move to the fourth question. And also want to remind again that in the chat is the email, contact the email at GADYF2023@gmail.com. So that if you have any questions or concerns, anything you would like to share with, the Global African Diaspora Youth Foundation, you're more than welcome to add that email. So once again, if anyone would like to respond to the previous question, let me know. We can move on to the fourth question.
I did have.
Sorry, Cassidy has a, yeah.
Hi. Okay, so this is a great question. And I believe, the original question is about what is the responsibility on African education systems. And I think it's a great question because we can talk about literal African, education systems that are in Africa, but it made me think we don't even have African education systems in America. So the first thing would be to establish them, and establish them with the intention of producing individuals that have the African-centered mindset, the same way that others establish their education systems to produce individuals that are really good worker bees. You get what I'm saying? So it's first on it's the responsibility of individuals like me and others that have similar missions to first establish them. And it's a great question for me because, again, I've never even heard of an African-centered school. I attended a Catholic school. I've seen Hebrew schools. I've seen, all these different types of schools now, but I had never even heard of an African-centered school until I moved to Washington, D.C. And they have a lovely school right up the street from where I live at called Roots. And that is the only school that I've ever seen in my time and experience in America where it's African-centered type of schooling, African-centered education. And not only do they teach you, your normal, your arithmetic, your language and things like that, they are seeking to introduce diasporans to those mindsets and that lifestyle. So for diasporans in America, it's very important. It's our responsibility to establish those things. And I feel like if we have more institutions like that, more education systems like that, that return to Africa is going to be eased, because for one, we're going to have individuals that want to return to Africa is inevitable. And while the return to Africa will have its struggles, I think that it will be a lot easier for diasporans that have grown up in an education system like that, because they will have that willingness to persevere through the struggles, to want to get through the challenges, to actually want to stick to learning and navigating Africa, rather than going there expecting something that isn't going to necessarily be true, getting frustrated and giving up on the process. If we have individuals that were raised in an education system that centers the African lifestyle, then the main thing is we'll have that willingness, because again, the struggles and the challenges are going to be there, but it's about what are we dedicated to and what type of lifestyle do we want to live and what's important to us. So great question, and that definitely has me thinking about some things.
Thank you, Cassidy. Yes, that was also insightful on your part. There are things that sometimes, I don't know if it's necessarily the way that things are programmed through imaging, commercials, and etc., as to why there's this mindset of what is to be expected when one returns to the continent, and forgetting that the continent is not a country, it's a continent. So it is, it contains various countries and cultures and different traditions and all those things. And so it would have the knowing that we would approach it from that perspective, and to do as much research and have as many conversations towards understanding the specific country and specific region and cultural aspect in which we would be interfacing with, if not for a daily basis, or if we're intending to actually become an expat in that space, to know what we need to know. So thank you for that. We now have question 4, which is, what are some of the practical steps and resources available to help the diaspora youth navigate the process of citizenship and repatriation? Who would like to respond to this question?
I think that one of the issues we need to deal with at this point, as Ghana leads the crusade on the return, I think that we should put a system in place that when the diaspora comes here, within not more than 3 years, they should be given a citizenship. And whether they want to return to their place of birth or not, they must have that in their pockets to feel that I have gone to Mama and Mama have accepted me. And it is, as an African, I came here as a student, then from student to immigrant, and then to citizenship. All this happened less than 4 years. So why should diaspora come? Some people are in Ghana for the past 10 years, and they have still not received their citizenship. What is holding you up? You are an African the day you arrive. The day you put your foot on that land, you are a citizen. And so I think that we should put pressure on the government to actually speed up the process of giving diaspora citizenship. And that doesn't mean they are being forced to stay here, but let them feel that really I have gone to the promised land. I would like to comment briefly about something we were talking about education, since this whole process is about education. I recall, Namel, if you can remind me, there was a gentleman in the US, Alvin Toffler, who said, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn to unlearn and relearn. So we must create what I call black spaces, where we can learn. Those are, somebody mentioned Afrocentric school is the beginning. So if we create black spaces, black library, black courses at schools, it shouldn't be something that we are going to get a degree. It's self-knowledge. And I do remind you that the first motto at the first learning center in Egypt, the motto was, man, know thyself. So in other words, if you don't know yourself, there's nothing you will do that will be relevant to your inner being. Those who are Muslim, the Quran said, you are like a donkey walking in the hot desert sun, carrying an encyclopedic amount of knowledge which is irrelevant to your well-being. And so we must begin to produce knowledge that reflects, that relates to who we are. Self-knowledge, that will be what I'll be looking for. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Uncle Nate. I agree. And I do look forward to the day when we come closer to the realization of some, if not all, of what you have invited us to think about. And so that would be really outstanding. And again, we have 2 more questions, but if anyone else would like to contribute to that 4th question surrounding citizenship and the community of the diaspora within the motherland and collaboration, please let me know.
Well, I'll just be very brief. I know Ghana does have a bill that is getting ironed out and is sort of, it hasn't gone to Parliament yet, but basically it's a citizenship bill for diasporans. And if the bill goes through, what would happen is if you were a diasporan and you came to the airport and you declared that you wanted to gain citizenship in Ghana, you would automatically be given a resident and work permit. This is yeah, I mean, but this hasn't gone through yet, and this is
No?
this is what I've heard from, you know, several people. I'm not in those in you know, intimate discussions. Ghana has also given or awarded, not given, but awarded citizenship to sort of 3 groups of people. The first was 33 people in 2016. Then there was about 100 and something people, 140 people in maybe 20, I think, or something like that. And then there was 120 people that just got citizenship in 2022. So I think Ghana is leading the way in doing that. I think there are other countries that are also doing that. So I know Sierra Leone has awarded citizenship to some folks. Liberia also has done the same, and I also believe Burkina Faso is awarding citizenship. The challenge, though, in my opinion, is that it goes back to this larger conversation about Pan-Africanism, because awarding citizenship to diasporans in Ghana is wonderful. You know, and it certainly tells diasporans that, you know, like just like when Kwame Nkrumah and the CPP were in power, and Nkrumah, you know, and the government called diasporans, you know, back home, and Bill Sutherland came, and Maya Angelou was here, and Malcolm was here, and Martin was here, and, you know, Du Bois, W.E.B. and Shirley Graham Du Bois moved, and George Padmore was here, and that was just amazing, right? And you had diasporans that came, but the challenge that you have at this point, right, is if you have a Ghanaian passport and you can't, whether you're a Ghanaian or a diasporan, and you can't freely travel across the continent, and there's not free movement of bodies and goods, having a diasporan passport isn't going to do much. If you have a diasporan passport, but you can still, you know, flip out your U.S. passport when you leave Ghana to go into, you leave Ghana with your U.S. passport, you come into the U.S. with your U.S. passport, but a Ghanaian who only has a Ghanaian passport may not even be able to get an appointment at the U.S. Embassy, right? Maybe standing outside in heat at 8 a.m. lining up to be disrespected and dehumanized when they're denied a visa, right? After they've come to pay $200 US for the appointment, right? So for me, I think that there's politics in even having Ghanaian citizenship, right? Who has access to Ghanaian citizenship, and what does that mean, you know, as a diasporan who has Ghanaian citizenship, right? For me, what that's significant and important, acknowledging the Africanness of diasporans as they enter Ghana or Kenya or wherever. But that's significant. But what's more significant than that is acknowledging that African people globally should be able to have free movement of goods and persons across the continent to work, to live, to contribute and to develop. Over to you, Isette.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Mjiba. And I want to bring everyone to the chat as she has put her contact information in there. You can contact her at mfrehiwot@ug.edu.gh or at mafrehiwot@gmail.com. And this is a way that she says that you can reach her, as well as on Twitter at Africa is Home. So for those of you that are able to copy the text in the chat, you can copy it and save it for future reference. So I really appreciate that insightful response. So we have two last questions, and that would be how can the African diaspora community in the motherland collaborate and support those who are planning to return to Africa? I do feel that that question was answered, but I still leave room for if anyone would like to add more to that in this part of the question.
I'm not sure, yeah, if there is much more. So bringing back what we've said before, when we're talking about education, I think there is work and resources and support to be given actually before we leave anywhere. You know, I've spoken to a number of people, especially in my coaching, where people are looking to go somewhere. And as Cassidy was saying, it's like if you're trying to run away, well, both Dr. Mjiba have said that, yeah, it really, the education I think that we need and the support that needs to be in place, and these conversations that need to take place before, is to really focus the mind on even the initial question, as in, or the initial comment that Dr. Mjiba made about what does the return mean? Because going home, for some, number one, for any of us of African descent, whether we know or believe it or not, it is a spiritual journey first. It doesn't matter what we think we're going to do, that it is, because we are of the soil. So we're going back. But the reason I say that is because that there is so much struggle, we're carrying so much baggage and everything. And in that space, not everybody has the opportunity or even the ability to think beyond, okay, I'm going to be there. I'm going to, yes, re-immerse myself maybe in my heritage. But one point that I think is important that I don't think we've covered here is that, yes, I agree that we shouldn't be seen as investors. However, if we claim and that we truly are children of the soil, we have a moral obligation and a duty to make sure that mother is okay. Because when mother is okay, the rest of us are okay. We can go wherever we want to, you know? So, so I think sometimes there's a bit of the struggle of, well, you know, how can we diasporans come? We've already got lots of money and then we want something from the motherland, you know? And then it's like, yeah, but I didn't choose to, you know, I didn't choose to be born here. So I want to come home, which was my home, you know, this clash. But really, really having that focus, which I think is also to inspire and motivate, as in Dr. Mjiba mentioned it, but my personal view is that we shouldn't come home looking for jobs. We need to come home and see how are we going to create jobs, or what are we coming to add our one city left, you know, our one city, our 10 cities, whatever, to build it up, not just because we're workhorses. No, it is about Ubuntu, isn't it? You know, I am, therefore you are, or the other way around. Like they say, it takes a village to raise a child. My own personal spin is it takes a village working together to make sure that everyone is okay. So I'm going home. Yes, I do expect something from you, but guess what? I'm also bringing something. It's a win-win. It should be a win-win. But let's see what we can do to build the networks, as Dr. MG was saying, and I think it's been mentioned a number of times, build the networks before we make the decision to maybe relocate permanently, or even just be intentional about, okay, I'm going on holiday to check it out. Even that purposefully, where can I go? Who can I meet? Maybe how can I even benefit when I'm there? Not because I'm bringing my purse or my wallet, but because, you know, maybe I have knowledge that they don't have. The kind of conversations I've had in here is even some with the taxi drivers where you tell them, oh, you know that the richest man in the world was African, and they look at you like you're crazy. So it's that kind of, let's have the conversations beforehand. Let's try and have them also whilst we're here. And I think actually thinking a bit broader and seeing how many environments we can get that education. It's like, can we involve our musicians, our different artists? It doesn't always have to be about sitting down, having a conversation, being in a class. It's like, we can sing about it. We have artists, we have, talented people that have brought all their skills as a form of informing us wherever we are. So I think, how also do we be creative with the whole conversation? It doesn't just have to be oh, I'm talking now, I'll listen, or you're talking, I'll listen, and vice versa. So I think I may have digressed a bit, but you get the point that I'm trying to make, hopefully, and I'll yield.
Yes, absolutely. I enjoy the recognition that there are many different ways to invest, and there's many different ways to engage in a dialogue, a conversation, a discourse with people that illustrates that you care, you're being considerate of their experience, and that you want to come forward and work together in whatever way that looks like, that is equitable for both sides. So I thank you for that. And as we proceed to the last question for our portion in our second podcast, I just wanted to invite those of you that if you want to stay in communication, just like Dr. Mjiba has put in the chat, you're invited to also put in the chat any information so that people can copy it and save it for their future reference. And the last question for today is, what cultural exchange programs or initiatives can be implemented to strengthen the bonds between African youth and their counterparts?
The platform seems to be quiet.
I thought you were going to take that question.
Could you repeat the question again, please?
Yes. Sorry, the last question. I'm sorry, my thing is moving. So the last question is, what cultural exchange programs or initiatives can be implemented to strengthen the bonds between African youth and their diaspora counterparts? So what cultural exchange programs or initiatives?
Thank you for that question, I said. There is something quite profound about the African diaspora in the Western Hemisphere. And perhaps most Africans have not taken notice and give them the credit for holding the flag of Africa outside of Africa. On this platform, I would like you to know, if you're a diasporan outside the continent, that we love you and we appreciate you. The bond have never been broken from day one. You live, and that's why we live. So when you look at the African diaspora, if not because of the African diaspora, more importantly, the African American in the Caribbean, there are so many things would have gone wrong, badly wrong in Africa. And they left here physically, but spiritually, they've proven to us every now and then that they never left. And why do I say this? I remind you to take a closer look at everything in the social arena that the African diaspora have created. They've set the social agenda. They created music and call it what? Soul music. They created dance. They call their food soul food. So everything they have done outside of Africa is always connected to the motherland. See, the breath of God touched man and man became a living soul. So the word soul is the African American who brought it to the New World. Before then, we never heard about the soul. So it's soul food, soul music, and soul brother. So when you put these three elements together, bingo, you got an explosive person, humanity, built in this person. So I want the Africans to begin to celebrate the diaspora and being the vanguard of Africa. And so I want you to come back. We can begin, you talk about education, we can begin to collaborate musically. We can begin to do films, as Dr. Njimba have put up, what do you call your movie, your film, Ubuntu or? Oh,
Umoja, and I'll put, you know what? I'll put the link in the chat. I just reminded me. So let me put the link in the chat.
Yeah. So what I'm calling the diaspora is come on home, people like Tara Perry, my other brother, I can't remember his name now, movie writers and producers. We can begin to create movies. Okay, we can begin to create music, dance, bring it on, and we can change the social agenda in the world because you've done it before. It's all in you. So on this platform, much of what we do at GADYF is education, educating the next generation of Africans globally. So I urge you, if you are doubting yourself, doubt no more. It's all within you, and you have the power to change. Ashe.
Ashe, thank you so much. So this has been the second podcast, and this one is entitled The Africa and the Diaspora Return. And we have been met with great teams of experts, diasporans, and also those of us from the mainland. And we have been hosted in this conversation by the Global Africa Diaspora Youth Foundation, GADYF. And this is known as the Diaspora's Gateway to the Motherland. And again, I'm inviting you to reach out to their email at gadyf2023@gmail.com. And at this point in time, if anybody else has anything else on their heart that they would like to say before we close out, the mic is to you.
I did want to share one thing. I think something that's important, because when we look at this task is monumental. And when you look at getting us to a point where we can return to Africa, it may seem like too big of a job. And yes, you know, rightfully so, it is a big job. We can't deny that fact. But I do want to highlight the fact that there's little things that we can do, and everything doesn't have to be so challenging and so profound. We were talking about things like music and films. I can't, living in Washington, D.C., there's a heavy African population, and I have never met so many people that, you know, have African roots before living here. And I've been exposed to Afro beats. And just something as simple as having a playlist full of Afrobeats artists and being able to sit down and I'm watching Afrobeats music videos and everyone looks like me. And you know, it's not like Eurocentric and this is the beauty standard. Things like that go such a difference. Even being on this podcast today, I have never heard people even refer to themselves as diasporan. And something as simple as just a label that carries a lot of power, because for a lot of Black people in America, someone, and I get asked all the time because, you know, now I do have a lot of African friends, they ask me, oh, well, what are you? And then I say, and a lot of us say, oh, I'm just Black. And while, you know, it is a proud thing to be Black, I can only imagine the power that would be held if we say, oh, I'm African diasporan. Just those little things make all of the difference. And while it is, you know, those big things like establishing the organizations like this one and creating our schools and things like that, it's also those little efforts that are going to make that return possible. And I just want to highlight the fact that the African identity for Black Americans is an identity that we don't really know. And also, not only do we not know it, we don't know it to be ours. So again, the responsibility is on organizations like this and institutions like this to show us what the African identity is, expose us to that. And then again, like Brother Nee is doing, affirming us and letting us know this is the African identity and it is yours, and giving us that comfort and that welcome and knowing that you know, this is our family. Those things make all the difference. So that was the last point I wanted.
Thank you, Cassidy. I really appreciate that. That was very moving. And it reminds me of, I wanted to wait to the end to share just a little bit from my perspective. My cultural background is Jamaican, and I was raised to understand and to know that Jamaica would not be what it would be if it was not for how Ghana has had a very strong influence and inspiration in a lot of the things that we do and who we are. Also, there are other aspects of the continent, but Ghana is one of the most strongest in terms of our connection as Jamaicans. So I've always known when I was little and growing into adulthood that Ghana is a place that I want to see for myself, walk the land and experience and have conversations with who I refer to as indigenous people. And I wanted to touch on that with when Dr. Mjiba had mentioned that word of indigenous, because it's actually the word that when, like with what Cassidy said, when we ask like, who are we? Or when a person asks, who are you? I'm very proud to claim the word indigenous. And I use it from the perspective because I do understand how it's associated to some realms in America, for example. But when I bring people back to the etymology of the word, it's to remind them that we are the original originating in nature. And I feel like that word has kind of been removed from us, similarly to how we've been made to feel about how do we see ourselves, whether we consider ourselves African, and then if you are African, which part of the continent. And then even with the word Black, or for those that are American, African American, there's a lot of points of tension with that. So for me, I have used the word indigenous in the framework of a Renaissance, as that word was used earlier in this conversation, to bring attention to the fact that Africans will not be left out of that conversation. And if you see yourself as African American, diasporan, Caribbean, whatever that may be, in my opinion, those of us that hold that within our DNA, for me, that word that is encompassing and that is indigenous. So I use that to describe myself as that. But I also remind people that there are intersections in it. And that's why I speak about being Jamaican. I also speak about what part of the continent for me resonates and why, which would be Ghana. So being here in Ghana now for quite a bit of time has been very has been healing and restorative for me, and I'm thankful to be here. And there are aspects of things that I've had to adapt to that I wasn't prepared for. But there are many things that being a Jamaican cultural background, I was very prepared for. So there was no issue for me. And I'm thankful for the communities that are willing to open up their homes, open up their conversations, open up their space, their energy, their time to share, even if it's a minute thing, about what it is for them to be here and what it took for them to get here, and to be as a guide. Those that are initiating organizations and foundations and just avenues of conversation so that people can have a resource to know what they are missing, what they need, what they can contribute, what they can invest, what they can add. And so that is what I'm very thankful for. I'm thankful for the opportunity to share with you all. I appreciate the invitation by Matriarch Na and her Uncle Nee to be here with you all today. And so I'm going to set the mic to Uncle Nee for him to close out or to continue in whichever way he would like. Thank
you. Thank you very kindly. I said, you are home. And I would like to say thank you to Dr. Mjiba for taking your time, your busy schedule to attend this. I want to tell you that you are planting a seed and watch it grow and blossom. And generations to come shall sit under that tree and remember your commitment today. So we thank you for joining us today. I want to say thank you to Cassidy all the way from Washington, D.C. You are my mother's daughter. The world spoke about you before you came. And so you are home with us, and feel comfortable and be yourself. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you to my daughter, Namele Asantiama. You've been a rock, and I'm grateful that you are on this train, because this train is bound to glory. So stick with us for a while, and you will see the glory of God manifested in you. So thank you for joining us. I want to say to Isaac, man, we're going to have some dumpling when I come to Accra. So prepare to be a yard girl, and you have shown that you are truly a yard girl. Welcome to Ghana and feel comfortable. So thank you to our listeners, those who are far and near. You have spoken to the daughters of the land. We are committed to rejoining each other physically, spiritually, and emotionally. So once again, on behalf of our ancestors and the Creator who's humble and thanksgiving to bringing us to this conversation today, may peace be upon you wherever you are. Thank you.
Brother Nee, can I say something? I'm in Jamaica right now. I just joined you on my vacation. It's Sister Evelyn here. I just wanted to also thank you for this platform today, and also to encourage us that the work is two-way street. I was in Ghana, and the lack of knowledge about the diaspora, it was very dismaying for me that the locals didn't know about the slave trade and where we settled, and the misperceptions we have of each other. So I think we also, those of us who are from the Caribbean, we have always felt, most of us in here, that Africa was born in us. So I don't need to be born in Africa to be African. But I also want us to help educate our sisters on the continent and brothers and aunties and uncles about those of us in the diaspora and the amount of flag holding we've been doing for generations, from Marcus Garvey to the fight for independence of Africa, the role of the Caribbean sisters and brothers. We have never forgotten Mother Africa. And I want them to remember us too. So it's a two-way educational work, to really let them know that we're here holding the fort, always promoting Africa, very Afrocentric in the work we do. And so just doing some work on that. And I see Sister Isette is over there. I'm sure she's doing some of that work as well. So thank you all for this great platform today. Ashe.
Sure.
Thank you.
Are we going? Okay. Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much again for allowing me to be here, and have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Looking forward to more great work.
You too.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.
So Timbuktu, Ghana, Mali, Sumanguru, what you're shown. But where you get, what you're shown. So Timbuktu, Ghana, Mali, Sumanguru, what you're shown. Manchester, Sumanguru, what where you get. Walk where they get what you're shown. What's that to do, Bama, Yes, and why, what you're shown. Get your Israel, get my gift, get Ethiopia, get Sudan, what you're shown. Abaka, one year, I for Karacha, I get one year, I'm in young thing. Abaka, 1 year, I for Karacha, I get 1 year, I'm in young thing. I'm a Gamian Matu. I'm a guy on young Motu. I'm a guy on young Watumo. I'm a guy on young Matu. I'm a guy on young Motu. I'm a guy on young Watumo. I'm a guy on young Watumo. We not at a catch him over walk out. Kaya Jenjins are the Mabama. Kaya Jenjins are the Mabama. Kaya Jenjins are Mabama. Kaya Jenjins are the Mabama. The Mabama. Kaya Jenjins are the Mabama. Kaya Jenjins are Mabama. What you me when I didn't sign a mama. What you want me when I do not my mama? I didn't sign a mama. I didn't sign a mama. I walk out to my 1 year, I forget I get my 1 year, I'm a young thing. I walk out to my 1 year, I forget I get my 1 year, I'm a young thing. Them say me no fit jump, them say you no fit jump, them say we no fit jump. Them say we no fit jump. wanyang watu mabuina chacha ikachu mawakara wakara wabanya kaya jenje sani mabawa nagbe wa yino kaya jenje sani mabawa padi kete kuyino kaya jenje sani mabawa kumre kwedu kaya jenje sani mabawa kumre kwedu kaya jenje sani mabawa suminge ura japa kaya jenje sani mabawa kaya jenje sani mabawa kinyabudu yino kaya jenje sani mabawa juju wajuni mene jenje sani mabawa what you do, what you know, when I do not me baba yo. Nagbe wa yino, via siri yino, padi keteku yino.